I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good afternoon. Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is the professionals, and I'm joined by George, Stu, and Mitch. Good afternoon, lads.
Hello, everybody.
Good to see you. We'll keep an eye on the game that's ongoing in the Premier League at the minute. 70 minutes played. Leeds 0, Manchester United 0. Stays like that. I think we'll all be happy. Even better if Leeds score, though. But as always, we hand over to you in the chat. If you've got any points you want to discuss, you can for the next hour. Make a suggestion in the chat. Tom Dixon says, we all want to win, but a point is a point. Just remember what we were like under the previous regime. We are better, stronger, and still a work in progress. And John says, great point, Tom, but if fourth place is there for the taking, then let's take it. Like we relied too much on Bruno. When he got that red card, I thought it might prove significant. Unfortunately, it was. And Michael says, good afternoon, everyone. Another point away from home. You'd think we'd lost 5-0 by some of the reactions on social media. The wins will come. That's 17 games unbeaten. What a run. So a selection of comments there, George. And we did Match Day Live yesterday together. Yeah. The dust has settled on a 1-1 draw at Bournemouth. I'm still very much the same mind as I was yesterday. It was a below par performance where we came away with a point from a very difficult opponent. And yeah, it keeps the run going. But I did put out a short video this afternoon, which I'm going to discuss next, which, I personally feel, we should concentrate on winning this cup in 2 weeks' time. And I know Eddie tends to think about one game at a time, but I think next week he really needs to consider the team that he puts out very carefully. But go back to yesterday, George. What you've heard those points made by the people in the chat. What's your views? Have you changed overnight, or are you still the same?
No. In fact, having sort of with one eye, as best I could, seen some of the match now, as well as listening to it, I'm still of the view yesterday. We had enough of everything bar goals to win that match 5 times over. I mean, you give the stats, Steve. We had twice as many passes as they did, twice as much as everything that they did, and yet we still couldn't get the killer goal. And the only thing that the seeing bits of it brought to me from yesterday was that if Isak hasn't got the composure to stick those 2 balls in the net chances that he had at a place like Bournemouth, is he going to do it at Wembley? I don't think he is. I'd like to think he would, but I don't think he is. And that's where my concern is. And the point was as most people, a lot of people are saying, but it no doubt it should have been 3. But at the end of the day, we're not losing, and that's what's important. And I can't see we're losing at the moment, actually, because the bit of the team that works is still working well, and that's the back 5 plus a couple in midfield. We can't be. I take the point about Bruno, but we can't be a one-man team. If that's where we are now, then something seriously needs to be done. I think there's no reason why the midfielders we've got now couldn't sort themselves out in a slightly different formation and overcome the problems that we've got minus Bruno. Some of the through balls, the balls played yesterday were great. There was some good stuff. Just we didn't convert them. And the more I see of Gordon, the more I'm delighted that we've got him, because he is a breath of fresh air. As soon as he comes on the pitch, he puts energy into the game. And we should use that energy as to make up for some of the things that we'll lose from Bruno. So I'm not depressed. I'm still quite optimistic. The other points people made yesterday in the chat when we're doing the live show was that, do you think the players are thinking too much about the cup and so the league form's suffering? I'd like to think that wasn't true. But nature being nature, it happened to the teams in the 50s, the great teams that we all romance about in the 50s. There were lots of examples of where people were saying that the given up on league matches because of the cup. And that included all the big names, were being accused of that. They given league wins to clubs that should have been battering in the league. And analyse the numbers, as you and I have done, Steve, with the early days of the past things that we did. They could have had a double out of one of those cup runs. They could have had at least one double if they'd put the energy into the league games. So I'd like to think they weren't thinking like that, but human nature being what it is, it's bound to be at the back of their minds. And it does give Eddie a headache for next Saturday, though, mind, because he's got a league game against tough opponents again. And they're not going to lie down for us. In fact, if anything, the fact that they're coming to St James's Park will book them up something rotten that they'll be really having a go at us. So that's given Eddie something to think about in his selection. Does he risk Big Joe because of his 10th red card? Does he do this? Does he do that? I think he's just got to pick a team to win. Is it a time to gamble with one of the younger ones? Though the young lad he had on the bench yesterday, I never seen him play, but I do know somebody that lives closely who's seen quite a lot of him. And he's talking about him pulling up trees in training. In fact, I saw on the chat in that goes on the strap before the news strap that goes on before we click into this. Somebody at Newcastle's talking about the next Peter Beardsley. Well, if he's that good, give him a go. Anyway, I'm not disappointed. I'm still quite optimistic.
Okay, Stu, on to you, mate. How did you see it? A little bit different, from our perspective, in that we were playing a team towards the bottom of the league, and of course we know that has its own, own problems. We were that team last season, and teams at the bottom put runs together, and Bournemouth, new manager, new owners, certainly made a fight of it and played well. That was what I put out on Twitter last night. I thought Bournemouth, were well worthy of the point, and probably on another day against maybe another team, probably would have got a win.
Well, I'll give you an idea of how I feel when I say good afternoon from the Champions League places. So my glass is still half full. We're still in fourth. There was some results that went our way. Spurs, Brighton, Brentford, none of them won. So none of them gained ground on us. So we've got to look at that as a positive. And we played badly and still didn't lose. So that's got to be a positive as well. But you have to take into consideration something that we've all known, I would say, since the turn of the year, is the ship is creaking. And we just need it to get to shore safely and successfully. And hopefully that'll be in 2 weeks' time. Because this time in 2 weeks' time, we could all be delirious in the fact that we won our first domestic trophy in, how many years? 60, 70 plus years, whatever it is, since 1955. Anyway, our first domestic trophy. I'm trying to do the maths as I'm speaking. 45, 65, 68 years. There we go. So also West Ham last week, Bournemouth this week, they all seem to be raising the game, and that's the status that we're at now. We're seen as a scalp rather than us just poor Newcastle coming down. And yesterday, none of our players had a good game. And I think the two words I like to use, I think what's getting into them is mental fatigue more than anything else. They're still doing the yards, but the pressing wasn't there as it has been for most of the season. So I don't think they're physically tired. The professional athletes, they get trained well, they get rested well. I think a lot of it is, irrespective of what anyone likes to believe, it's in their back of the mind that they've got a cup final in a couple of weeks' time. But it's a strange season. There's been a few strange results since the turn of this year. And we're still hanging in there. Yes, it would be nice to turn some of these draws into wins. But I'm sure Dr. Neil said many times last year we were talking about turning losses into draws. So it's another step. It's another point. And the one thing I disagree with when people say we don't have a squad for the Champions League, irrespective of we finish first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth, or seventh, we're still going to be in Europe. We'll still be playing twice a week. So we're still going to have to add to the squad. It's just a case of what level of talent we can attract with the position that we're in, because for sure we'll spend money in the summer. And we've known since the takeover that the whole playing staff needed a huge all-over, didn't it? And they can only do it in phases. And we've only had 3 opportunities to get rid and bring in. And each one that's come in has improved what we've got. So it's patience is key as far as I'm concerned. And I just think we're doing well. And it was really nice to see proper fans saluting Eddie Howe yesterday, the Bournemouth fans. I thought it was a fantastic touch. And that's what football is about. That's something that Todd Bowley should be looking at. This is our game, and this is what we're talking about. So, yes, it was disappointing, and we get to a stage where you have to say, yes, we're all grateful for where we are, but you can't keep holding that against you. We should be progressing, and we are capable of beating teams. I think that's where the frustration comes. We are capable of beating these lesser teams. But it is what it is, and we're still sitting fourth. A big game next week and an even bigger one the week after. And then we'll tan Man City the week after that. Next 3 games, all wins. How about that?
The reason I've been looking a bit pensive was nothing to do with Stu's delivery. It was the fact that Rashford scored. There was a VAR decision. It was very, very tentative. It was his hand. It would have been pretty harsh on him because it was a brilliant header. And VAR has ruled that the goal was onside. So Manchester United taking the lead, 80th minute. Rashford, that man again, is in scintillating form for Manchester United. And it's got the feel of 1-0 Cantona at the moment every time Rashford pulls on that red shirt. So let's see if Leeds can get back into it. It's unfortunate for the Yorkshire outfit, but they've been worthy of a draw today from what I've seen. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that for the last 10 minutes. Mitch, over to you. Just on summing up with yesterday's game, mate.
Frustrating. And I think that's the general feeling. Certainly out here, watching with everybody, was at times, I think, we made Bournemouth look better than they were. And I think as a fan base, I think this is the double-edged sword of the Stockholm Syndrome that we've had from the Ashley era. You can actually now be grateful for where we are. And I think we've done it long enough this season where you can also be critical of performances and say we could and should have done better. And it's finding the right balance. Everybody seems to be flip-flopping. It's not about a glass half full or half empty. It's about a full glass or an empty glass. And I think it's the double-edged sword of getting used to being thankful for where we're at, but also feeling able to criticise performances where it's due. It's not mutually exclusive. You can't actually say, we could have done better. The thing that stood out again for me yesterday is right now, our set pieces, we are not causing enough havoc.
No.
With other teams, with what we've got in that box. There's something changed with the type of delivery we're putting in, and we need to be doing better, I think. That's one thing. Isaac is, I think he's one of these mercurial players that'll frustrate some days. Because remember, that's the same player that finished coolly twice at Liverpool and had one outrageously disallowed. Again, he doesn't just become an immediately, couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo overnight. He's also back from injury. But I think it's also right to say, and is for everybody who wanted Wood out of the door, are we now looking a little late with Wilson and Isaac and no other option at number 9? I think I get that some of the decisions we're making make sense from a financial point of view. Was that a gamble to sort of say, okay, we can go a bit light on the squad here? And I think we're also now seeing just how much Bruno contributes to that midfield, and getting somebody in alongside him of a similar quality, I think, is the first next thing we must do to look to progress to the next level.
Yeah, I put a message out on the shorts. 2-0 Manchester United. That's the game wrapped up. 84 minutes played, and another good finish. Leeds certainly just collapsed like a pack of cards there, and didn't quite see who scored it, but good goal regardless. 2-0, and the one team capitalising on other teams' slips at the minute is the men in red from Old Trafford. So 2-0. And we go again next week. George, the video I put out this afternoon was simply to say that I believe now is the time to perhaps, realise that an unbeaten run is great. It's very nice. 17 games unbeaten now. Of course, the last time we were defeated in the Premier League was against Liverpool, who's the opponents next week. But with the injuries, and of course we're not sure of the seriousness of all of the injuries, of any of the injuries at the moment, with regards to Almiron and ASM and of course Willock. I'm sure we'll hear within the next couple of days how serious they are. But is it time to rest players, George? For me, I think it is. The squad is definitely, as we know, lacking certainly in midfielders. But is it a chance against Liverpool next week to give one or two players a rest? I personally think Trippier needs a rest before the cup final. He is an older player. The last 3 goals we've conceded, he has been to blame. For those goals. I think a lot of it's down to switching off mentally, but also a little bit of tiredness. I also think there's 1 or 2 others who could rest. You could rest a Longstaff or a Joe Linton, and you could play Elliot Anderson. He's not getting enough game time on the pitch. Maybe next week, rest Nick Pope and play Dubravka. For me, you can't put an unbeaten run in a trophy cabinet, George. That was the point I was trying to make this afternoon.
Yeah, I read that, Steve.
I genuinely feel that a trophy has to be the be all and end all. Europe will come, and I'm sure it will come this season. Whether that'll be Champions League will depend on, our luck with injuries and suspensions. But what do you think about that, George? Do you think it's a good idea? Or, I mean, I'm not asking whether you think Eddie Howe will do it. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think in my opening, I did say about Howe's got a difficult choice for who plays next week, and I think that's part of where I was getting at. That it's all right sticking kids on the bench, but he's sooner or later he's going to have to put his mouth where his money is, and that's one of the things he could consider, is giving Anderson a run, as you say, from the start, and mixing things up a little bit. And if he's going to risk Big Joe on against Liverpool, then he's risking more than that, isn't he? He's risking him not being available for the cup final. So he's got a lot of choices to make. Whether he'll make them, I'm not so sure. Me personally, I think I'd be worried if Trippier wasn't there, because he contributes so much on the field. Other than just being my right back. But there's no denying that the last 3 goals he's been negligent, to say the least, at that back post when he should have been doing things and he wasn't. But I don't know. Yes, I can see the logic in resting players and giving 1 or 2 of them a break, but I would hate that to be at the expense of a thrashing by Liverpool at St James's Park, because the demoralising factor that would put through the club and through the fan base would be hard to take, I tell you. So he's got a very, very difficult choice to make next week as to who he puts on that field. And as I say, with 1 or 2 people breathing down their necks to have a go at first team, then maybe he should have a go with 1 or 2 different names. But hard decision for Eddie Howe to make, though. Because as I say, a thumping off Liverpool at St James's Park would send shivers down the spine of everybody connected with the club at the moment.
I mean, Stu, this conversation might be academic, because next week we may have a couple of injuries. Might not be long term, but maybe enough to keep players out next week with the final in mind. So maybe how we'll have to make those decisions anyway. Certainly with Willock, it looked serious yesterday. The word seems to be coming out of the club that it's not as serious as first thought. However, I doubt he would be available next week. With ASM, it looks as if it was just a precaution. He was making a bit of a meal of it, it has to be said, when he went off the pitch, but it didn't look as serious as first thought. And with Miggy, it was wrist or hand, whatever it was. Players play with casts on these days. Or whatever. It's usually par for the course, but he certainly didn't look as if it was going to be keeping him out long term. But other players, I mean, Dan Burn, the back 4 in general, I don't really want to just pick out Trippier. Trippier was at fault by coming off the post, but let's face it, Dan Burn didn't pick his man up, and neither did Isak. So it was a succession of mistakes which led to that goal. But then Dan Burn, looked shattered yesterday. They were targeting that side every time. What's your thoughts? Is it 3-0 to Manchester United? That just had the ball in the back of the net, but no, it's still 2-0. Go on there, Stu. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm first of all surprised that you were surprised that Man United had a VR decision going for them and it wasn't ruled against them. That was the biggest shock today. But you're probably right. It would be practical to shake the team up a bit and change them around. As the three you mentioned, Willock, ASM, and Mickey, all coming off injured for different reasons or different injuries, I suppose. However, football's an emotional game. It's a passionate game. And when you get after tomorrow night's game, Liverpool versus Everton, when you'll have Klopp complaining that we've had 2 extra days rest than them, every single one of us will be like, get it, get the full strength team and get them battered. So we could utilise those 2 days and rest the players. It's that to me, they need to rest, reset, and then start winning again. They know what needs to be done, and I'm sure all of us could pick the cup final team now, and it'll be if everyone's fit, it'll be the team that beat Leicester. It's his tried and tested formation. So if people are needing rest, and you can point at Burn, you can point at Trippier, you can point at many people, but none of them had a good game yesterday. Collectively, they were bad, and there's something I said on Twitter, I think it was last night, was we're not good enough to have too many people having bad games and still getting 3 points. We can't do that yet. We're not that team yet. But for the first time in 30 years, I would say since Keegan first come, this includes the Robson era as well, we look forward to every single game. And it's win, lose or draw, but there hasn't been any of the losing yet. So everyone's glued to the press conferences. We're going the right way. And if you rest players, it'll be because they need resting. But I can imagine each player will be thinking, I don't want to be rested. I want to play, because if someone comes to my place and they have a stormer, then am I going to miss out on this cup final? So, yes, I can understand the practicality behind resting some, but if they needed it, if someone's not 100%, then do rest them. That extra week's going to give them the impetus and momentum that's needed to get them back into the full fitness. And we'll also have Bruno back, because irrespective of what anyone suggests, Bruno will start. He's the fulcrum to our team. He's the one that makes us tick. He's the one that makes players around him better. And this is his stage. And I just wish it was 2 weeks time now when we were there. That's the bit we've got to go up. But versus Liverpool, I think Newcastle-Liverpool, there's a history. We've got some revenge to get from the first game this season. If we recall, the only team to have recorded a victory against us in the league this year. There's a few wrongs that need to be righted there, and they're not in the best of forms. And I think going there full strength, risking one injury, and beating them comprehensively will give us more momentum going to the cup final than resting players and scraping a draw, or even, dare I say it, losing to Liverpool again. Imagine the only team to do the double over us, and that's them. So I don't think anyhow, the way he is, would field a weakened team in the Premier League, especially against the only team that's beat us. That's just my thoughts anyway.
2 VAR decisions. Rashford's second goal was chalked off, and then he was substituted, resting him clearly, keeping him wrapped in cotton wool. And then Weghorst has just had a goal disallowed as well. Still 2-0, about 10 seconds left in that game. Manchester United taking all 3 points at Elland Road. So, yeah, over to you now, Mitch, and just your thoughts on resting players. Interesting points from Steve Middlemiss. He goes, when you're winning, you don't need a rest. And other people in the chat saying, we haven't got midweek games, so we don't need a rest. But what players are tired?
That's the mental fatigue I was talking about.
Yeah.
I think we are showing a little bit of tiredness. But again, isn't it a sign of a good team when you play badly and don't get beat? And like we've been saying for the last 5 or 6 weeks, we're probably in our lull in the season. Everybody expected our form to dip. And I think that's where we're at the moment. And I think the gloves are off once the cup final rolls around, because it's a cup final. And if you can't get up for a cup final, what are you doing playing professional football for? Yeah. So I think I don't think it's in Howe's nature to rest people. I think Howe's nature seems to be he wants to play as strong a side as he can put out every time. And that's why we've got the consistency we've got. And you see what happens when he has made wholesale changes. What happened against Fulham when we were trotting away with it? He started making changes at the back and suddenly they got themselves back into the game. Yes, they were too far behind to really seriously be back in the game. But that's what happens when you tinker a little bit. And I don't see it as Howe's nature to do that. I do think he's got an interesting option in terms of Gordon being cup-tied. I think it's nailed on Gordon will play against Liverpool.
Instead of Willock,
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's nailed on. And then we'll have to see what comes back from the assessments on these injuries. Like you rightly said, players can play with a cast, so I'm sure Miggy would be all right for the final at least. Yeah, you know, unless it's a wildly unstable fracture, which it didn't look like. Willock's injury looked more like an impact injury rather than a pull or a strain. When he was brought down just off the touchline, you know. So again, see how that comes out in the wash. I don't think that's a big long-term one. Wilson's total absence I found interesting. But hopefully that really is just a good precautionary move, because I think that will be terrible for Wilson if he was to miss out on the final, not just for the club.
Has he been carrying that? Has he been carrying that, Mitch? Because he hasn't been the Wilson that we all know and love. It looks as if he's been carrying this.
Suggested to me by someone who usually gets a lot of these things spot on, that he'd come back from the World Cup with COVID and he was struggling with long COVID. Now I don't know if that's part of the problem, but he certainly hasn't looked right to me since he came back from the World Cup. If that makes sense.
I'm laughing at the comment, Mitch.
Oh, I know, mate. I just he does look like the mummy sometimes, doesn't he? So whether it's to do with that, don't know. I know there's a suggestion it's potentially another muscular thing, because he really does have, you know, ligaments of licorice and muscles of marshmallows sometimes, and that seems to be his problem. In that when he does get injuries, they tend to be niggly, long-term, difficult to recover from ones. But he's certainly not looked great since he come back from the World Cup.
No, definitely not. Okay, plenty more to talk about. Got some interesting suggestions in the chat, which I'll come back to after the ads. Thanks, as always, to our sponsors, Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickys.co.uk. Email info@mrvickys.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to Blowhole Brewery. You can find them at blowholebrewery.co.uk. Beers brewed on the River Tyne. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK Coach Holidays, based in Morpeth. Telephone 01670 362 460 and mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls, looking after you on your tour. Thanks also to 3 Property, who specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the North East. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give the guys a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property, or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wales and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the videos and the technology side of things. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. Hit the thumb up to like the channel and click share to your social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. If you want to become a member, you pay a £25 one-off fee, and you can go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and find membership pack, or put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight there. If you subscribe, we do give you a free car sticker. All you need to do is email john@nufcmatters.com and he'll post you one out. We also support the food bank on this channel, nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. You'll find the match day bucket where you can make a virtual donation. We've also got some events coming up over the next couple of months. First off, we've got an evening with Steve Howie at the Tyneside Irish Centre, Friday the 24th of February. Tickets are available from our website, nufcmatters.com, and they are priced £15, not $50, as you can see on the poster. An evening with Nobby Solano is also at the Tyneside Irish Centre, Saturday the 25th of March. Tickets are £15. Book now at nufcmatters.com. And an evening with Frank Clark and John Gibson, Thursday the 20th of April, again at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £15 and you book now at nufcmatters.com. Supermac and John Gibson will also be at Felon Cricket Club on the 16th of February. To buy tickets for that, contact the venue direct. We've got a whole host of t-shirts available from our website, nufcmatters.com. Gives you plenty of ideas for presents, for birthdays, anniversaries, you name it. Get your Anthony Gordon t-shirts and your Wembley t-shirts today. Stephen Kennedy asks us, George, do you think we missed a trick by not buying an out-and-out goal scorer last summer or in January, as I don't see Isak as double figures a season striker? He seems to prefer pulling out on the flanks. He's a class footballer, but I worry about our lack of firepower, which could turn a possibly great season into an average one. So Alexander Isak, you know, he's back from injury now, but he isn't really an out-and-out striker, George, is he? So
not in the sense of the old-fashioned centre forwards we're used to. That's absolutely right. However, you made the point earlier on, Steve, that the bloke that played against Liverpool in the first game he had took Liverpool to the cleaners. You know, he scored two goals, one of which was disgracefully choked off, and they were superb. They weren't lucky or inventions. They actually were superb goals, and the other goals he scored. And the game against Southampton, when he killed their defenders with one run, that showed a lot of what Isak seems to be about. I don't know why it was missing yesterday, but that Isak would have won us the game. You know, so whether we missed a trick, the problem is as always, were the right people available, and I think we've got to trust in the system we've got that seems to have served well so far. That if they didn't think the right man was available, then they didn't buy rubbish to get rid of later on. And at the time, of course, we still had Chris Wood here, and so something would have been done with Chris. So no, I'm not sure about missing tricks, but I think being patient is the watchword for me, and that is that they didn't think the right person was available, so they didn't go and get an alternative that wasn't as good. But as for Isak, I was critical of him yesterday, but I've seen enough of him to know that he's when he's on his game, he can frighten a lot of people with just pace and all the rest of it. So, no, I don't think they missed a trick. I think they just played patient to make sure the resources that we've got, bearing in mind that Eddie Howe remains every time he speaks now about FFP, we need to spend wisely. I think this summer could see a difference because I suspect there's going to be some major movement on sponsors, which will make a whole lot of difference in the financial thing. But I don't think we missed a trick. I think they just were careful, is how I would look at it, and I'm glad they were because they've been right so far.
Stu, bit of criticism, you know, is always going to come Newcastle's way. If this goal scoring drought, I guess, continues, you know, people up front not getting goals. I mean, Wilson got one, first one in double figures really last week, and then he's out injured. Isak not, you know, £60 million plus spent on him, but he's been injured, hasn't he? It is difficult to criticize the guy. I mean, at the end of the day, he's not had an opportunity to play in the full team. What's your views? Did we miss a trick not bringing another striker in?
Yes and no. They're very difficult to get top quality strikers, aren't they? So in a way, I can understand why if the ones that were critical of Chris Wood, that's the marker you're paying, isn't it? For someone who then's going to just get lambasted for not being good enough anyway and on a high wage, harder to ship out. So if they can't get it, then they'll wait. They've shown with Botman, they've shown with Gordon, they're willing to wait an extra window to get the person that they've already identified. And I think anyhow, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of him, but the way it appears to me is that he prefers to start with Wilson. It's tried and tested. He knows what he gets. Wilson will basically softens up the defence for Isaac to come on. And yesterday, the Bournemouth Stadium, it's a tight, compact stadium, isn't it? The pitch is smaller as well. And you imagine someone like Isaac on a big pitch like Wembley, if Wilson is not fit, you know, and say give him license to roam there. The spaces you create against people like Harry Maguire, it's exciting, and it's just to think what he can do. So yeah, he didn't have a good game yesterday, but as I said earlier, none of them did. Not one person can hold their hands up and say I played well today, and that's something we just have to suck it up. You know, we're not going to win every game. We're not going to win every game 3 or 4-0. And with Isaac, he's a quality player. So I don't understand that for him to get. He's more than quality. He's probably one of the best forwards we've had in a long, long time, to be honest. And he needs a run in the team. And he'll show his worth. Absolutely, he'll show his worth. We've already had glimpses of it, and if you look at his goals per minute ratio, it's up there with the best of them in the league anyway. You know, so get him playing against Liverpool next week. He likes them. Score against them. They've got their troubles in midfield, same as ours is if you look at the injuries. But I think with the home crowd and everything else, we'll have too much for Liverpool. And this could be where Isaac can start. So I've got no worries about Field and Isaac if Wilson's injury is a bit longer than hoped. You know, ideally I think he'd be fit and plays. But if there's any doubt that he might not make Wembley, then you start Isaac against Liverpool and rest Wilson. He needs rest, and as Mitch has pointed out there with his marshmallow legs and everything else, you know, was it licorice ligaments and marshmallow?
Licorice ligaments, marshmallow muscles.
So he does need wrapped in cotton wool, and we've got Isaac. You know, I don't understand why after one poor performance, then you know all of a sudden he's not good enough. It's ridiculous how far people go. There's no common line, is it? It goes straight to the extremes. We've got St. Maximin who can play in that role. They can play with a Falstein. They've got Gordon that can play there. And I'm sure Gordon will play a bigger role next week anyway. But the whole idea is to blend them in over a period of games. But if injuries say he has to play, then play him. You know, but I don't see any issues playing Isaac. And I think he can score. Why can't he get to double figures? That's only another, he scored 3 now, is he? So it's only another 7 in 15, 16 games. He's more than capable of that. Absolutely, he's capable of that. And we will start creating the chances, and we are creating chances, but just not putting away. There's one team going to get a hell of a hiding, and I hope it's in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Well, 2 weeks especially.
Yep, Ferdinand says we conceded the same goal as we did against West Ham, and the back four take too much on the ball before releasing it. Nearly cost us no point. Nearly cost us no points in the dying minutes when Byrne got robbed of the ball. Yeah, a few people switched off, Mitch. That was the problem, I guess. But yeah, lots of people want to talk about different things in the chat. I just want to push on to this with you, Mitch. And again, it's positional. Do the lads think we need a proper left back now? This was interesting from Howe, Mitch, because in his press conference, Lee Ryder, I often say Lee Ryder doesn't get an opportunity to ask any serious questions, but he managed to ask Eddie Howe a pretty serious one at the weekend, and he just said, do you see Dan Byrne as a left back now, or do you see him as a centre back out of position? And he said, I see him as a left back, very much as a left back. And I was shocked at that, because you know, ultimately what's happened here at any level of football, you know, whether it's Sunday League, Saturday League, you know, Premier League, whatever it is, this happens. You find your left back is out injured or ill. They have to take a seat on the sidelines for a week or so. Somebody to fill in. So you get another defender, a right back or a centre half to go and fill in that position. He goes and does that. Your mindset as a manager is if you win the game and you win it well, you don't really want to change the team. So you leave that player in for the following week. Your mindset as a manager, and I'm speaking from experience, is that you probably then say, right, okay, I'll be able to make that change when we get beat. The problem is, we haven't been beaten for 17 games. So he's not been able to make that change. And that back four and goalkeeper have played really well together, despite the fact that Dan Burns is centre half. He's not a left back, for me anyway. But Eddie Howe clearly now saying at the press conference on Friday that we've trained him as a left back and I now see him as a left back, which I find a bit bizarre. But, do you think we need another left back in? Paul Dummett signed for an extra year. He sits on the bench, doesn't get a game. Matt Target isn't fully fit, so he won't be back for the cup final, I wouldn't have thought. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I was told that he liked the look of the young lad we got off Norwich and was hoping he would break through this season, and he hasn't. I think that was possibly the original thought at left back, that we had enough options. A personal experience, that's how I ended up playing more games at left back than I did right back, because the left back broke his leg and I ended up being a fill-in then, never got dropped. It does happen. But that is an interesting comment from Eddie Howe, that's the way he views him. But I think it's also worth pointing out, didn't he play more Premiership games for Brighton at left back than he did at centre back too?
Yeah.
I think I'd have to look at the stats for that, but somebody will tell me. He certainly has never been a pure centre back in terms of his career at the top flight. In a money and everything else, no object world, I would dearly love a carbon copy of Trippier at left back. That would make we're very complete, I think. And I think Byrne probably gets away with a little bit more because he's one of our own. Although that never really was afforded to Dummett to the same level. So do we need one? I think we've got to ship people first. And I think it's got to be a place we've got to look at in terms of, we should be, again, it's that we are allowed now to look at our squad and look at our team and say, right, where could we be better? It's why people are having a little pop at Isaac for his performance yesterday. I think he set himself a high bar with that opening game against Liverpool.
Yeah.
And as Stu quite rightly pointed out, he's got 3 goals now and how many starts? With 15, 16 games to go, he could quite easily hit double figures. He just didn't have the best of games yesterday. And again, as you've all pointed out, we don't have the squad depth to have 5, 6 or 7 people having an off day together. Because again, that's pretty much what we had. And we still managed to scrape a point out of it. And Byrne looked knackered at the end, I must admit. And if there was a way to give him a break, it might come. But if Howe feels he is now the first name on the team sheet for left full-back, we've got to roll with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange one, Stu, isn't it? To hear him say that. But I haven't seen the stats of how many games he played, but I automatically believed he was a centre half. I mean, he was playing alongside Dunk at Brighton, wasn't he? And I'm pretty sure that was centre half.
Yeah, but I think when we signed Byrne, he wasn't one of the ones that got the pulses racing initially, but he's won us over with his commitment, his attitude, his endeavour. But if you take the fact that he's a local lad out of it, and it's great when he excels, like when he scored the goal and how committed he is to us. It's fabulous. And this is what we need in the squad. But that's the key word to me. He's a squad player. And there's a few in that team that are squad players. And I've championed Newcastle side in Kieran Tierney for this and ever since we got taken over, because he would compliment Trippier on the left side to know what Trippier is on the right side. And he's not getting a game for Arsenal. So that's who I'd like to see be playing left back, and he is a proper left back. And you've got someone like Byrne as cover, then you've got a quality defender covering 2 positions, and that actually frees up an extra space in the squad. We know that there's a few people in that squad, and it's great that we're loyal to them and everything else. But to progress, sometimes you have to stop being loyal, and you've got to move forward, and you've got to increase the quality. And I think Byrne, as a centre half, is a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre half. He's a centre half. And he's not a centre So if you're bringing players in and you think these are better and they will give more to this club than what we've currently got, that's the players that they're looking for. And that's why we're not signing a centre forward for the sake of signing a centre forward. There have to be an improvement of what we've got, because if not, we're just going to go around in circles and fall into the Everton category and just throw money at people, you know, and just to try and get someone. So it's our targets, it shrinks, because when you've got a team that's sitting fourth, to add to that, you need to get the right person, and that right person is going to be either playing very well in a team equally as good as us, or he's going to be the star player in a team below us. And to try and prize that away mid-season is going to be very, very difficult. So I expect us, as George said, that there'll be a lot of incomings and there'll be a lot of outgoings in the summer. And again, this is what's been referred to in the past as you can only have a 25-man squad, so you've got to get rid of some of the, it's wrong to say dead wood, but let's say the ones that aren't going to be taking us further forward. We all know who they are without saying the names. And then the people that are in the team now, I think if we start next season, I think you could only say there'll be about 6 that you would say will definitely be starting next season. And there's another 5 positions that are up for a room for improvement in. And I'm sure we will improve those positions.
George, left back, do we need a new one?
I don't think we'd do any harm to have another one. Mind if do we need another Scotsman in the team? God, Tierney. No, what a good choice he would be. You're absolutely right, Stu. He would be a fantastic choice. But speaking as somebody who, right up to county level, played centre half. Now, when I went to Newcastle United, you're not big enough to be centre half. You're a left back, and that's how my progress changed dramatically. And they were absolutely right. You know, I mean, there's no doubt about that. No, I think Dan. The only thing I'd say about Dan Burn yesterday is, and other times, he always has, in my view, a struggle when ESM's in front of him. I mean, I remember an Eddie Howe interview where he was trying to praise Chris Wood when people had been criticising Chris Wood, and then he talked about Chris Wood being a fantastic tactician to have on the field. And one of the things he said was, I know fine well if ESM doesn't get back to cover Dan Burn, Chris Wood will. And I thought, what a thing to say about your centre forward. But if you watch, it was absolutely true. So, you know, but there's no doubt Bournemouth targeted Chris Wood yesterday. That long ball down the right side.
Dan Burn, you mean?
Dan Burn. That right ball down that right side all the time was going up over the top of him, and he was having to turn and go for it. Yeah. Yeah, there's an argument that says we've got to look at it. But as the lads have just said, there's an argument to look at one or two places if we're going to make progress. And left back could just be one of them. But I think the value of Dan Burn is his heart and his commitment to the club and to the team. And also the togetherness of that back five, which incidentally still have the best goals against column in the Premiership, is important. And I don't think we should throw that away willy-nilly. But yeah, let's look at left back in the summer if Howe thinks he needs one.
Yeah, ESM, George, I felt that was one of his better games yesterday. He went off injured, but I did feel it was a better game. And I know we've pillaged Dan Burn a little bit today. You know, it wasn't the best of games, but he has got that problem that he's playing with ESM on that left-hand side. And ESM's natural feeling is to bomb on and push forward.
Well,
and
isn't that what we bought him for?
Exactly. I genuinely feel he was making an effort to track back yesterday. I just felt that Bournemouth were just lobbing the ball over the top of him and just aiming at Burn. Yeah. You know, it was a hard game. But yeah, look, ESM, we have a pop at him plenty of times on here. I thought there was a lot more positives yesterday, and I was good to see him go off, to be honest.
Well, if it was hard to look for a man of the match yesterday, and if you were looking for one, he wasn't going to be far away, was he? He was busy. He had one or two good runs that could have produced more, just that people weren't switched on when he played balls through. No, I agree with you. He had a better start yesterday, and the only disappointing thing was I was still like you when I seen it on the telly later on, struggling to see what the hell was wrong with him when he went off. You know, he was certainly making a meal of it. And if the other lads are injured, and as somebody said on the strap before, if they need any white tape, they'll have to go to ASM's house because he's got it all on his legs and arms. You know, but he was better yesterday. I quite agree. But at the end of the day, as I just said, if bombing forward and frightening defenders is what he does, isn't that what we're bought him for? Isn't that why he's there? So it's not just him. It's up to the rest, up to the coaches and the rest to try and make sure that he gets that opportunity. In my view, it's all about him. And if he is trying to fit into this mantra of track back and all the rest of it, well, good on him. Because that's the only way he's going to survive. That's for sure. You know, in terms of being just an out and out attacker, he's cards marked. He's going to have to come back by the look of it. But yeah, he was better yesterday. But who knows what the injuries are that people have, and that might throw something up as well. But I was like you, a little bit bemused at the fuss he was making when he went off. It was much ado about nothing as far as I was concerned.
Stu, I mean, his half-time report was he could do better, I think, after the first part of the season. But yeah, is he doing a bit better now, do you think? I mean, he's, you know, Eddie Howe keeps saying he's now back to full fitness, and we're seeing what we need to see from him, you know, but he can do better here, do better there. But I genuinely think it was one of his better performances yesterday.
Well, his performance yesterday was an improvement of what we've seen previously. Like if you compare it to the West Ham game, yes, he was better.
Yeah.
But the window of opportunity that Eddie Howe mentioned that he had, has he done enough for me to be a starter? Has he done enough to be a starter in the team? Not for me, he hasn't. I think once the cup final's out the way and Gordon's bedded in, I think that role's nailed on for him, for Anthony Gordon to be playing in that role. I want to be proved wrong. I want ASM to become his mercurial best. And with a big game coming up next week, it could just, he likes playing against the what he sees as the top teams. He proved that against Man City. But if you take the Man City game out, when else has he had an absolutely stonking game for us this season? I can't think of another game apart from the Man City where he's played really, really well. And you get the comparisons because he's French to Ginola or Ben Arfa. Well, his end product's nowhere near what those two were. He's got all the talent in the world, ASM. He really has. And I just want it to click for us. And if his application on the pitch and his end product and his performances on the pitch were a quarter of how good his social media team is, then we'd have a world beater. We'd have a genuine world beater. You know, you can only talk the talk for so long before you have to start walking the walk. And saying the right things and putting sound bites out and stuff like that, Newcastle fans want to see it on the pitch. And the frustrating part with ASM is we all know how good he can be, but it needs to be consistent. So I really hope next week he takes the bull by the horns and he could have Trent Alexander-Arnold on toast if he really wanted to. Because he's not really that good a defender, and if he does what he does against Man City, instead of cutting inside all the time, he did that yesterday, didn't he? Even the commentator said, well, he took the scenic route there. He went right away across the pitch, and I actually thought of Supermac probably pulling his hair out, shouting and screaming, because he refers to it quite a lot, doesn't he? But if he starts hitting the byline and mixing up his attack, he's got this quickness in his feet to bamboozle just about any defender he wants. So hopefully this week he gets told early doors. He's starting. We told you had a window of opportunity. This is the third game. Go and play yourself into this cup final team. And there might actually just be a space in that team now if Joe Willock is carrying a hamstring. So you just have to organise things. The place is there. It's up for grabs. He was told that. And I just pray he takes the opportunity that's coming this weekend. And he's on fire against Liverpool, because an on fire St. Maximin is going to give us 3 points.
Yeah, just seeing the league table there. Manchester United in the second place behind Arsenal, a point ahead of Man City, who now kick off their game against Aston Villa live on Sky. Newcastle in fourth place, 41 points, a game in hand on Tottenham, 2 points ahead and a far superior goal difference. Ginola hit 7 goals and about 12 assists in 2 seasons. This is a debate we've had before, Mitch, but yeah, I don't want to get into all of that. I mean, there's a few of our French players over the years who have probably fallen into the same category as ASM, Lauren Robben, of course, Ben Arthur. But look, from my point of view, I thought he had a better game, Mitch. What was your take on it?
Can't disagree. He certainly looked better yesterday. I just wish I had a penny for every conversation me and Stu have had in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Let's start with the words, I would like to be proved wrong, but when it comes to ASM, he's frustrating, he's polarising. We all want him to succeed, because if he's doing well and playing like he did against Man City every week, aren't we going to be flying? And we know it's in there. And he's becoming a very difficult padlock to unlock. You know, it's sort of, how do we get that out of him more and more? And when he goes off with the injury he went off with yesterday, I often worry about non-contact injuries like that, but it wasn't one of these ones where you can see as he landed, the knee went in a direction it's not supposed to go in or something like that. So you would think it shouldn't be too bad. He's obviously nipped something on the landing, I think. But yeah, he's going to frustrate. He's going to cause differences of opinion. These kind of players always do. All I ask is when you're given the chance, try and grasp it with both hands. And certainly giving him another run was the right thing to do, in my opinion. I don't think it sends the right message to pull him after a single game unless you've had an absolute stinker. But secondly, he did look like he wanted to make the most of it. And he in flashes looked quite good. But again, in flashes. And we need that constantly. We need it's the consistency that frustrates me, or the lack thereof.
Yeah,
I would agree.
I mean, the goal he scored against Wolves, that volley,
Goal of the season.
Goal of the season. Well, we've not seen that again.
No,
if he's going to, as Neil says, consistency means that we should be seeing that at least 3 or 4 times a season, not once a season.
Yeah. Exactly, I would agree with you 100%. Okay, as you know, we do have an intermittent series on the professionals. I found another one, lads.
Class act, buddy.
There he is. Lazio fan, is he?
Yeah.
Unbelievable, Jeff. So thanks to Simon for sending that in. I don't forget about these things. It's only if somebody sends us a photo. If you can find Mike Tyson in a football top or soccer top, as he will call it, send it in. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to the moderators.
Steve, can I have a quick comeback on something Stu said about the pitch at Wembley?
Yeah.
In 1950s, Stan Seymour made sure that the pitch at St James's Park was the exact same dimensions as the pitch at Wembley Stadium. And that stayed the same until when we got Big Sam. And he used to move the lines depending on who we were playing. I mean, there were some stupid occasions when the touch line was at least a metre from where it used to be. But however, it went back there. And my understanding is it's back to where it should be, the same size as Wembley Stadium.
Excellent.
There we go. It was worth the interruption, George. Worth the interruption. Bad Blood Podcast says if Mike Tyson wants to support 78 teams, then who's going to argue? Cheers, Lee. We'll finish the show because Man City's going to kick off against Aston Villa. Enjoy it. I'm back 6 o'clock tomorrow night with the fans forums. If you want to come on and have your say tomorrow night's the night to do it. Take care, lads. See you later.
Good to see you, lads.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.